The second aspect of the aesthetic experience is something called aesthetic solitude. So, why use the word solitude? It's like this, it's really interesting. In some movies, when the goal is to rake in big bucks at the box office, who do the directors and producers always go after? That's right, they aim for the big-name actors. When a film or TV show has a bunch of famous stars in it, it attracts a wide audience. But when we watch these movies, we always know who's on screen. It's like, oh, now it's Gong Li, and now it's so-and-so. Remember that movie, The Founding of a Republic? It had a bunch of big-shot actors, and whenever one of them showed up on screen, it was a big deal. What does this tell us? It means we haven't truly gotten into the heart of the artwork. When you really connect with a piece of art, you stop thinking about who the actor is, even though you knew at first. It could be Liu Shaoqing, Gong Li, or anybody else, you know at the start, but then you start to forget and get caught up in the work itself. So, in any real aesthetic experience, it's like there's a kind of semi-illusion going on. What's a semi-illusion? You're taking it seriously, feeling like you're really entering the real world, but you also understand that it's all part of a performance. I hope I'm explaining this clearly enough. When we look at a piece of art, we know it's just a made-up thing, but what's the feeling? It seems so real. There are two realities at play here. One is the reality of the actual world, and the other is the reality within the made-up world. There are two kinds of realness. What happens if these two realities get mixed up? Let me give you an example. It's been said that initially, The White-Haired Girl wasn't a movie, but a stage play performed in Yan'an. When the character Huang Shiren, the landlord, came out, people would say, "He's such a villain," and talk about how he mistreated Yang Bailao. And then, in the audience a soldier from the 8th Route Army would pull out a gun, intending to shoot the actor. He really thought the actor was a bad guy, totally immersing himself in what? He saw the play as real life itself when, actually, it was all part of an illusion, and he couldn't tell the difference between the two. So, when we talk about this idea of aesthetic solitude, this is the kind of situation we're talking about. When we dive into a piece of art, we're stepping into a whole new world that feels almost real, but it's like a dream world. We kind of shut out the real world. But if we can't shut it out, we're just like, oh, it's that actor, what's his name, in action. We're just caught up in the glitz and glamour, maybe even fangirling or fanboying over the actor. If that's us, then we totally missed the real deal. What they call aesthetic solitude, it basically cuts off our link with reality. It's like when you're sitting in a concert hall, waiting for the symphony orchestra to kick off. What's on your mind? When will this concert wrap up? Can I still catch the last bus home? You're stuck in those thoughts, still tied to the real world. Will I make it to the last subway? Your mind's juggling with all those practicalities. Then, bam! The conductor takes the stage, the whole orchestra bursts into music, and it's like we're suddenly transported from real life. We're cut off from our past, present, and future outside, and that's when we enter what they call aesthetic solitude. For real, when it comes to experiencing art, you gotta make sure you're not gonna be interrupted. Like, if you're about to dive into this long symphony or whatever, you gotta shut off your phone, make sure there won't be any unexpected visitors dropping by, and basically set the scene for some uninterrupted time. And, if you're gonna be all caught up thinking about everyday stuff like a leaky faucet, you gotta sort that out before you can really get into the music. So, for any deep piece of art, it's no joke, it demands you to really make an effort to get into this zone of aesthetic solitude. I mean, unless you're just treating the music as background noise when you're doing chores and catching bits and pieces of it here and there, you ain't really fully experiencing the work. We're sorta giving it a boring name, Huh. It's really about putting our perception back together. Our everyday perception works fine, but it's all scattered and broken up. We only use bits and pieces of it to pay attention to what's going on around us. But what if we start getting into a work of art? What does that make us do? It makes us reconstruct our perception as a whole. Art pieces get our creative juices flowing, and that means piecing together our usual scattered perceptions into a big picture. So, that's what accepting a work of art is all about. It ain't just sitting there and taking it in. We shouldn't just see ourselves as empty folks waiting for the artwork to fill us up. That's not really appreciating art, not really accepting it. Accepting art is a creative act in itself. It's all about diving into the creation of the artwork. Getting involved means actively putting our perception back together as a whole. Art is all about how we see it. It's not just about what's there, it's about how we interpret it and make sense of it. When we really get into a piece of art, it's like our senses get a wake-up call. It's not just about looking at something, it's about feeling it deep down in our bones. It's like a whole different level of understanding, a kind of spiritual connection, if you will. And here's the thing, we can't just sit back and let the art do all the work. We're not just passive bystanders. When we accept and appreciate art, it's a whole creative process in itself. We're actively getting involved in putting together the big picture, reconstructing the artist's vision in our minds. So, it's not like you have to be a professional painter to get in on the action. Even if you've never picked up a brush, you can still be a part of it all. When you start to connect with a painting, you're not trying to figure it out, but to feel it. And as you really start to feel it, it slowly pulls you in, and you sort of feel the emotion behind every brushstroke. Then, from the details to the whole picture, it starts to come alive, and eventually, you can really get into it, as if you were the one who painted it. You can feel the strength of the painting, the significance of each brushstroke, and it's the same with music. The most intense music listening experience, what's that? It's when I realize that this piece feels like something I've composed. I know at this point that certain voices should come in, the melody from the first violins should soar, and then the cellos should complement it, blending together, harmonizing with each other. So my hand just naturally waves like this, and it really takes off. You finally become fully immersed in the whole symphony. I understand what the conductor's action at this moment signifies. It's not just a theoretical activity. Genuinely accepting an artwork is like engaging in the creation of the artwork. When you recite a poem, like the poems of Li Bai or Du Fu in China, you are also participating in its creation. You dwell on each word used, grasping the meanings of these words, their connections with other words, and at that point, these words can't be swapped out, you completely get them. This understanding isn't just in your head, but you've actually reconstructed what in the process of appreciating this poem? The whole experience. The words reconstruct are really important. We shouldn't just think that the artists create and we're just there to consume their works. No way, that's not how true art appreciation works. Art is all about actively getting involved and being creative. Everyone's got their own take, their own vibe, you know? It's like what we were saying earlier about secondary creation. It's like a performance art, and it's all about taking it in and creating at the same time, for both the artist and the audience. That's why we can tell when a conductor just isn't hitting the mark. How come we can size up different conducting styles and skills? What makes us capable of really judging one conductor against another? It's because we can create it ourselves. Otherwise, you just hear people say stuff like, Karajan is amazing or Bernstein is the bomb, but you wouldn't really know why. We, on the other hand, when we check out different versions, we can totally get it. In China, there's this cool thing called Piaoyu for Peking Opera. Have you heard of it? You know, our relationship with art is just like that of Piaoyu. Do Piaoyu just sit back and enjoy the performance? No way. They want to perform it themselves, even if they'll never be as good as Mei Lanfang, died 1961. But hey, no biggie. That's the best way to appreciate Peking opera art. These Piaoyu put on the costumes and perform a segment themselves. Sure, they may not have the natural talent, right? Maybe not the best training either. They can't sing like the 4 famous female characters in Chinese Peking opera, right? They'll never be on their level, but for them, it's the best way to embrace and appreciate the art. That's the spirit of Piaoyu for you. Our connection with art is all about getting involved. I mean, can you really appreciate a poem by just silently reading it? Nah, you gotta speak it out loud to really feel how beautiful it is. You start to groove to its rhythm and savor the words chosen. It's the same with singing. Hitting the karaoke is a blast, right? Once you sing it yourself, you get what the song's all about. Who cares about getting every word right? You just feel it when you belt it out. It's all about hitting the right notes and nailing the vibe. That's what makes it awesome. This whole thing is a key part of the aesthetic experience, getting in there and being a part of it. It's about how we perceive and put the whole work together. So, let's not separate art creation from art enjoyment. That gap doesn't even exist. If you spend a lot of time diving into a particular art field and keep reshaping how you see things within that field, who knows? Maybe one day you could become an artist, even if you're already in your 60s. Take Borodin, for example. He was originally a chemist and a part of a group of influential Russian composers. Among them, Borodin, a brilliant chemist, pursued music as a side passion. Eventually, he got so into composing that he totally forgot about chemistry and made a name for himself as a composer, leaving his mark on the history of music. Who's to say there's some unbridgeable gap between us and artists? There isn't. If we think about it, when we really get into enjoying and accepting art, it's like we're part of the creative process. Over time, we start seeing things in a whole new way, and hey, we might even start creating stuff ourselves. That's the so-called peak experience of music or art. So, what exactly is a peak experience? It's all about totally reshaping how we see things. When someone really appreciates a painting, they can see the beauty in every brushstroke, the flow of the lines, the way colors are used, and the power of each stroke. It's like feeling as if you were the one who painted it, even though you've never lifted a brush. It doesn't matter. And from all this, we can figure out the 3 big things about artistic experiences. First off, it's not about practicality. We need these experiences, or else everything we go through in life is just a means to an end. Instead, we should aim for an experience that's an end in itself. I'd like to throw in a quote from Heidegger that simply says, "That is beautiful." It's about experiencing the thing for what it is, not for what it can do for us. In the end, it all comes down to having a pure love for beauty. It's not about what we can get out of it, it's about embracing the essence of the thing itself. And that's not something we can achieve by aiming for some kind of gain. And hey, there's more to talk about when it comes to appreciating art. I was talking about how we appreciate art. I mean, everyone can relate to this. There are 3 stages to it. First, there's the preparatory emotion stage, where we kinda set the mood for appreciating a piece. I used a poem by Xu Ting on page 169 as an example. You know, with a poem, those opening lines are crucial. It's like the beginning of an article, especially when it comes to writing. The idea is to just pull the reader in, cut them off from reality. That's why I think the start of Shu Ting's poem is so well done. The wind, like it's there and not there. The rain, just a sprinkle. This is the deep south in late autumn. It just sucks you in, instantly painting a picture of the southern climate and drawing you in. The openings of all great art, it's the reason they're great, because they set the stage so perfectly. And let's talk about music for a sec, especially Western classical music. The really great composers, their masterpieces often don't have tons of build-up. There's no complex setup. It's just real and hits you right in the feels from the get-go. It's all about setting up that perfect mood. So, the beginning is super important. Then, I moved on to the second stage, sensibility recollection. We've all been around the block in life, right? We've all got our own experiences, and art makes us remember them. It's not just about remembering the experiences themselves, but also the impact they had on us. This is crucial stuff, it's all part of the process of appreciating a piece. And finally, we get to the third stage, where we let go of our own view and become one with the artwork. This is what I call lingering. Basically, the process of appreciating art can be broken down into these three stages. It's not just about music, you know. It's about diving into literature and soaking up paintings, too. Imagine this, you're standing in front of a painting, and suddenly, all the distractions around you melt away. It's like you've been there before, even though you haven't. I can vividly recall seeing this painting, Harbor at Sunset. It was at the Boston Art Exhibition in Shanghai many years back, when I was still in college. I strolled through the exhibition, and when I paused in front of that painting, it was like I got absorbed into it. My classmates beside me, the hustle of people around, it all just faded away, leaving this sense of aesthetic solitude. Ever wondered why this happens? It's like you've had a flashback to a familiar feeling, a flood of memories and emotions rushing in. That's what I call entering the second stage. And as you immerse yourself in the artwork, there's no longer a distinction between you and it. That's the third stage, letting go of yourself. I reckon that's where our appreciation of art should aim to be. Sure, we'll be diving into science, getting lost in theoretical musings, and getting wrapped up in work down the road. But we gotta make time for the arts. When it comes to delving into the world of art, how do we truly connect with a real masterpiece, beyond just seeing it as a form of entertainment? There's no harm. But hey, let's not overlook the real essence of art. It's about nurturing our individual spirit and contributing to the greater pursuit of truth for our whole nation.